You're nothing and nobody will ever remember your name. Those words burned into my brain the day my mother-in-law first said them to me, exactly 3 years ago at my own wedding reception. She whispered them with a smile while we posed for photos, her arm around my waist, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my side. The photographer captured what looked like a touching moment between a new mother and daughter-in-law. Only I knew she was marking her territory. But last week, standing in the massive entryway of my new craftsman-style home in the suburbs of Boston, watching her eyes dart desperately around my vaulted ceilings and hand-scraped hardwood floors, I finally understood the satisfaction that comes from patience. From playing the long game. From knowing exactly when to serve a dish best eaten cold. All I'm asking for is a microwave, she repeated, her voice climbing higher with each word. Unable to hide her bewilderment, I simply smiled and replied, "Well, Patricia, beggars can't be choosers, can they?" Let me rewind. My name is Maya, and 3.5 years ago, I married the man I thought was the love of my life, Ethan. I was 27, finishing my MBA, and he was 29, already climbing the corporate ladder at a financial services firm in downtown Boston. We met at the gym, cliché, I know, but there was nothing cliché about how quickly and deeply I fell for him. Smart, ambitious, thoughtful, with a jawline that could cut glass and the most soulful brown eyes I'd ever seen. What I didn't know then was that Ethan came with baggage. And that baggage had a name, Patricia Harlow. Patricia had been a widow for 15 years. Ethan's father died when he was just 14, leaving behind a successful construction business and a substantial insurance payout. Instead of being devastated by the loss, Patricia seemed liberated. She never remarried or even dated. She had her son. She had her money. And most importantly, she had control. From the moment Ethan introduced me, Patricia viewed me as a threat. Not because I wasn't good enough for her son, actually, the opposite. I was too ambitious, too independent, and worst of all, too confident. She once told Ethan, within my earshot, that I had the effect of someone trying to be upper class, whatever that means. I'm the daughter of Indian immigrants who worked their asses off so I could have opportunities they never did. My father drove a taxi for 25 years. My mother cleaned hotel rooms. Sorry if my effect doesn't meet your WASP-Y standards, Patricia. The first year of our marriage was death by 1,000 cuts. Patricia would call Ethan at all hours with emergencies that mysteriously resolved themselves the moment he arrived at her McMansion in Wellesley. She'd send him texts criticizing my cooking, my housekeeping, even the way I folded his socks. When we'd visit for Sunday dinner, she'd serve dishes loaded with dairy, despite knowing I was lactose intolerant. "Oh, I completely forgot," she'd exclaim, watching me push food around my plate. "You need to set boundaries with your mother," I told Ethan repeatedly. But he'd just sigh and say, "She's alone, Maya. She only has me." The irony was that Patricia wasn't some fragile old lady. She was 58, fit from her daily tennis matches, active in her country club's social scene, and she managed the real estate portfolio her husband had left her with impressive skill. She didn't need Ethan, she wanted to own him. By our second anniversary, the situation had deteriorated further. I'd landed a fantastic job at a tech startup, leading their finance team. The salary was amazing, the equity options even better, and for the first time in my professional life, I was out-earning Ethan. Not by a little, by a lot. You'd think he'd be proud. Instead, he grew distant. I later discovered that Patricia had been whispering in his ear, "What kind of man lets his wife be the breadwinner, and she'll lose respect for you, just wait and see." As if my success somehow diminished him. As if we weren't supposed to be partners. The breaking point came 6 months later. I'd been working insane hours on a critical product launch. Our company was positioning for acquisition, and as CFO, I was knee-deep in due diligence documents and investor presentations. I'd been pulling 14-hour days for weeks. I came home late one Thursday night to find Ethan and Patricia sitting at our kitchen table, papers spread out before them. "What's going on?" I asked, dropping my laptop bag. "Maya," Ethan said, his voice oddly formal. "Mom thinks we should consider a postnuptial agreement." I stood there, stunned. "A postnup? Why?" Patricia smiled that tight, lipstick smile that never reached her eyes. It's just practical, dear. With your new position, and the potential windfall if your company sells. Ethan needs to protect himself. Protect himself? From what? From me succeeding? From divorce, she said bluntly. The statistics for marriages where the wife out-earns the husband are quite grim. And when there's a cultural difference. She let the implication hang in the air like a bad smell. I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his mother she was out of line. Instead, he stared at the table and mumbled, "It's just a precaution, Maya." That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I opened a separate bank account and transferred half our savings into it. 2 weeks later, the acquisition went through. My equity options were worth $3.8 million, pre-tax. I didn't tell Ethan right away. I was still processing what it meant for us, for me. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney, just to understand my options. The day after that meeting, I came home to find Patricia's Mercedes in our driveway again. I walked into our living room to find them huddled over our laptop, scrutinizing our joint accounts. "Looking for something?" I asked from the doorway. They both jumped. Patricia recovered first. "Ethan was just showing me how you two manage your finances." I was giving him some advice. "Were you now? And what advice would that be?" "How to track your wife's spending. How to hide assets before asking for a divorce." Ethan had the decency to look ashamed. "It's not like that, Maya." "Then what is it like, Ethan? Explain it to me." He couldn't. Or wouldn't. Just kept saying I was overreacting, that his mother was just trying to help, that I was being paranoid. Patricia stood up, straightening her cashmere sweater. "I think I'll leave you two to talk this out." At the door, she turned back to me. "You know, Maya, in our family, we value loyalty above all else." "Really?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you value control." After she left, Ethan and I had the fight to end all fights. Everything came pouring out, his resentment of my success, my frustration with his inability to stand up to his mother, his accusation that I'd changed, my retort that he'd never really seen me clearly to begin with. "She told me you've probably been cheating on me with your boss," he finally admitted. "She said women like you, career-obsessed, always do." I laughed bitterly. "Women like me? You mean successful women? Independent women? Or did she mean brown women?" "That's not fair." "She's not racist." "No, she's just a controlling, manipulative witch who can't stand that her son has a wife with her own mind and her own money." "Don't talk about my mother that way." "Why not?" "She talks about me like I'm garbage. She's been poisoning you against me since the day we met, and you let her. You choose her. Every single time." The next day, Ethan moved out. To Patricia's house, of course. He left a note saying he needed time to think, that maybe we'd rushed into marriage, that he wasn't sure we wanted the same things anymore. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. Instead, I called my real estate agent. With the acquisition bonus and my newly vested equity, I had the cash to make a move I'd been dreaming about. 2 weeks later, I closed on a stunning 5-bedroom Craftsman in Newton, one of Boston's most prestigious suburbs, ironically just 3 miles from Patricia's neighborhood. The house needed some work, but it had all the character and charm I'd always wanted: built-in bookcases, a huge front porch, a backyard with mature oak trees. Ethan texted when he heard through mutual friends, "A house? You bought a house without even talking to me?" I replied simply, "You moved out without talking to me. I guess we're even." Meanwhile, life threw Patricia a curveball. A pipe burst in her basement, causing extensive water damage throughout the first floor of her home. Her insurance would cover the repairs, but she'd need to move out during the remediation and renovation, which would take months. A week after I'd moved into my new home, my phone rang with Patricia's number. "Hello, Patricia," I answered coolly. "Maya." Her voice was tight. "I hope you're well." "I am, thank you." An uncomfortable pause. I understand you've purchased a new home. Yes, I have. Another pause. It's in Newton, I hear? That's close by. It is. She sighed deeply. Look, I'm sure Ethan has told you about my situation with the house. Actually, no. Ethan and I aren't speaking much these days. Oh. She sounded genuinely surprised. Well, there was significant water damage. I need to move out while they make repairs. It could be 3 months, possibly longer. I waited, saying nothing. The issue is, she continued, her voice straining with the effort of sounding pleasant, all the short-term rentals in the area are exorbitantly priced right now. Some are in New England, you know. And the insurance only covers a certain amount. I almost laughed out loud. Patricia Harlow, who owned a $2.3 million house outright and had a 7-figure investment portfolio, was pleading poverty. That sounds challenging, I said neutrally. Yes, well. She cleared her throat. Ethan mentioned that your new house is quite large. 5 bedrooms, is that right? It is. And you're there alone? I am. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she broke. I was wondering if you might consider renting a room to me. Just temporarily, of course. 3 months at most. I'd pay, naturally. I nearly dropped the phone. Patricia Harlow was asking to move in with me? The woman who'd spent 3 years making me feel worthless, who'd actively tried to destroy my marriage, who'd called me nothing? I understand this is awkward, she continued when I didn't immediately respond. But I thought, given the family connection? I repeated. That's interesting terminology, considering you've spent years treating me like an interloper. Maya, I know we've had our differences. Differences? Is that what you call systematically undermining my marriage? Telling your son I'm cheating on him? Demanding a postnuptial agreement because you assume I'll divorce him once I have money? Ethan told you that? For the first time, she sounded rattled. He told me everything, Patricia. Every little poison seed you planted. She was quiet for a moment. I may have been overly protective. But surely you can understand a mother's concern. No, I can't understand deliberate cruelty. I can't understand looking at your son's wife and deciding she's the enemy before even knowing her. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? At my wedding reception, the happiest day of my life, you pulled me aside and told me I was nothing and nobody will ever remember your name. Who says that to a bride? She faltered. I don't recall saying that. I'm not surprised. It was probably just one of dozens of nasty comments you've made. But I remember. I remember every single one. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. I don't have anywhere else to go, Maya. All my friends are away for the summer. The hotels are booked with tourists. Ethan's apartment is too small. Ethan has an apartment? I thought he was staying with you. He was. He moved out last week. Got a small place in Back Bay. This was news to me. Ethan hadn't communicated anything about his living situation. Please, Maya, Patricia continued, and I heard something I'd never heard from her before, desperation. I know I have no right to ask. But I'm asking anyway. I'll stay out of your way. I'll pay whatever you think is fair. I should have said no. Anyone with an ounce of self-respect would have said no. But something stopped me, not compassion for Patricia, but curiosity. A perverse desire to see her in my territory for once, dependent on my goodwill. I'll think about it, I said finally, and hung up. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my new porch swing, watching fireflies rise from the lawn. I thought about karma, about the strange way life sometimes serves up perfect opportunities for, not revenge, exactly, but realignment. Setting things right, I called Patricia the next morning. You can stay, I said without preamble. 3 months, $2,000 a month, paid up front. You get the smallest bedroom on the 2nd floor. Shared bathroom. No visitors without advance notice. I work from home 3 days a week, so you'll need to be quiet during business hours. She agreed to everything without negotiation, which told me just how desperate she was. We arranged for her to move in the following weekend. What followed were the most surreal 3 months of my life. Patricia Harlow, the woman who'd treated me like dirt beneath her Ferragamo flats, tiptoed around my house like a chastened child. She kept her bedroom door closed, cleaned obsessively after herself in the bathroom we shared, and spoke only when spoken to. Gone were the designer outfits and perfect blowouts. She wore the same 3 casual outfits in rotation and pulled her hair back in a simple ponytail. Meanwhile, I thrived. I tackled renovation projects each weekend, refinishing the hardwood floors, painting the dining room a bold peacock blue, installing a fire pit in the backyard. I hosted dinner parties for my work colleagues and friends, pointedly not including Patricia, though I always saved her a plate. I took daily walks around the affluent neighborhood, chatting with neighbors, becoming part of the community. One evening, about a month into our strange cohabitation, I found Patricia sitting on the porch swing, staring at nothing. "Everything okay?" I asked, more out of politeness than concern. She startled. "Yes, fine. Sorry, I'll go inside." "You don't have to. It's a nice evening." Hesitantly, she settled back. After a moment, she said, "You've done amazing things with the house." "Thank you. The kitchen especially. Those custom cabinets must have cost a fortune." I smiled slightly. "They did." She nodded, then asked tentatively, Have you heard from Ethan?" "No." "Have you?" "Not for 2 weeks." She looked down at her hands. "He's angry with me too, now." "Why?" She sighed heavily. "He found out some things. About how I handled Robert's estate." Robert was Ethan's father. "What things?" She looked uncomfortable. "Robert left specific provisions for Ethan. Money for education, for starting a business, for a house when he got married. I may have led Ethan to believe those funds were tied up differently than they actually were." "You kept his inheritance from him?" I was incredulous. "Not all of it. Just controlled it more than I should have." She twisted her wedding ring, which she still wore 15 years after her husband's death. "I was afraid of losing him." "So you lied to him?" "4 years. I protected him," she snapped, a flash of the old Patricia emerging. Then she deflated. "At least, that's what I told myself." We sat in silence for a while. "You know," she said finally, "I blamed you for changing him. For making him question things. But the truth is, I was afraid you'd show him who I really am." She laughed bitterly. "And look what happened, I did that all by myself." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to absolve her. 2 more months passed. Patricia and I developed a strained but functional routine. She'd make coffee in the morning before I came downstairs. I'd leave the New York Times on the counter after I finished it. Small, wordless civilities. I learned from the neighborhood grapevine that her house repairs were complete. She could move back anytime. But she didn't mention leaving, and strangely, I didn't bring it up. Then came the twist I never saw coming. I arrived home one evening to find Patricia in the kitchen, cooking. This was unprecedented. "I hope you don't mind," she said, looking nervous. I thought, well, it's been 3 months today, and I wanted to thank you. The kitchen smelled amazing: garlic, ginger, cumin, coriander. Familiar scents from my childhood. "Are you making?" I couldn't finish the sentence, I was so shocked. "Butter chicken?" "Yes, I found a recipe online. And there's non-warming in the oven. Though I'm sure it's not as good as what you're used to." I approached the stove cautiously. The curry looked right, the rich orange color, the cream swirled on top. "You made this, for me?" She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I know it's your favorite. Ethan always talked about how your mom made it for Sunday dinners." She hesitated. "I also made it lactose-free. Used coconut cream instead of heavy cream." I was speechless. Patricia Harlow had cooked an Indian dish for me? And remembered my dietary restriction. We ate in the dining room, with the good plates and cloth napkins. The butter chicken was surprisingly decent, not as good as my mother's, but a sincere effort. Over dinner, Patricia did something even more surprising. She apologized. Not a qualified, "I'm sorry" if you felt, non-apology, but a real one. "I was cruel to you, Maya. From the beginning. You didn't deserve that." She set down her fork. "The truth is, I was jealous. Of your youth, your ambition. Your relationship with Ethan. The way he lights up when he talks about you." "Talked," I corrected. Past tense. "No," she shook her head. "Talks. Present tense. He still does." I frowned. "But you said he hasn't been in contact." "With me, no. But I ran into his friend Marcus at the grocery store last week. He mentioned they'd had lunch, and Ethan spent the whole time talking about you. About how much he misses you." My heart clenched painfully. I missed him too, despite everything. But too much had happened. Too many lines had been crossed. "It's too late," I said quietly. "Maybe not. He's made mistakes, huge ones. I pushed him into many of them, I admit that. But he loves you, Maya. He's always loved you." I shook my head. "Love isn't enough. Trust, respect, those matter too." "Yes, they do." She twisted her napkin in her hands. "Which is why I've decided to sell my house." "What? Why?" "Because I need to stop clinging to the past. To control. To the idea that I know what's best for everyone." She looked around the beautiful dining room. "You've built something wonderful here, Maya. On your own terms. It's made me realize how much time I've wasted trying to live through Ethan instead of having my own life." After dinner, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $25,000. "What is this?" I asked, stunned. "I've been going through the accounting of Robert's estate. This is the money he left specifically for Ethan's first home with his wife. It should have been yours and Ethan's years ago. I'm sorry I kept it." I tried to hand it back. "I can't accept this." "It's not for you to accept or reject. It's not mine, and technically not even Ethan's. It's for both of you, as a couple. Robert wanted his son and daughter-in-law to have a good start." She pushed the envelope back toward me. "Keep it. Even if you and Ethan never reconcile, it belongs in this house more than anywhere else." The next day, Patricia moved out. Her house was ready, and our strange interlude was over. As she loaded the last of her suitcases into her car, she turned to me. "Maya, I know I have absolutely no right to ask you anything. But I wonder, would you ever consider talking to Ethan again? Not for my sake," she added quickly. "For his. And maybe for yours." I leaned against the porch column, considering. "I don't know, Patricia. A lot of damage has been done." "I understand." She hesitated, then asked, "What about me? Is there any chance we could—" "I don't know, have coffee sometime? Start over?" I looked at this woman who had caused me so much pain, yet who now seemed genuinely remorseful. Who had cooked butter chicken for me. Who had finally returned what was rightfully Ethan's and mine. "Maybe," I said. "Let's give it some time." She nodded, accepting this limited olive branch. As she got into her car, she called out, "Oh. I almost forgot. The renovation crew left something behind in my garage. A brand new microwave still in the box. I have no use for it since mine works fine. Would you like it? For your house?" I smiled, thinking of the irony. The woman who once called me nothing was offering me a microwave for my beautiful new home, the home I'd bought with my own money, through my own success. "Sure, Patricia. I'll take the microwave. Why don't you drop it off next week?" 6 months have passed since then. Patricia did bring the microwave, and surprisingly, we did have coffee afterward. And then lunch a few weeks later. Slowly, cautiously, we're building something that might one day resemble a healthy relationship. As for Ethan, we met for dinner last month. There were tears, recriminations, apologies. There was also laughter, and memories of why we fell in love in the first place. We're seeing a therapist together now, taking it one day at a time. But here's the most unexpected turn. 2 weeks ago, Patricia's house finally sold. She's using part of the money to travel to Europe for 3 months, something she'd always wanted to do but never had the courage for. And when she returns? I'm thinking of looking for a condo, she told me over brunch last Sunday. Something smaller, more manageable. Maybe in Cambridge. I hear there's a great adult education program at Harvard Extension. I always wanted to study art history. I raised my mimosa glass to her. To new beginnings. She clinked her glass against mine. And to microwaves, she added with a self-deprecating smile. Sometimes they're exactly what you need, even when you think you deserve a whole kitchen. I smiled back, thinking how far we'd come. How sometimes the things we think will break us actually remake us instead. And how, occasionally, the only thing someone needs to change is the shocking realization that you're perfectly capable of walking away and thriving afterward. Oh, and that microwave she gave me? I donated it to a women's shelter. They needed it more than I did.
If you liked the story, subscribe to our channel and share your impressions in the comments. It's important for us to know which stories will be interesting to you. We try to post new stories every day.